What's going on YouTube? TTBFC fam. Today we're going to go over the resistance band bent over row and also just rows in general. Now we will have more videos about the different rows like a bent over row, dumbbell row, and all that good stuff. One thing about the dumbbell row is I posted this maybe 2.5 years ago and I had a trainer comment on it that when you do the dumbbell row, you should feel your oblique. And if you don't feel your oblique, you're doing it incorrectly. Yes, I'll say that again, that when you do the dumbbell row in particular, you should feel the single arm row, you should feel your oblique. And if you don't, you're doing it incorrectly. And I had a bunch of people, of course, say, oh no, the primary muscle group is your lats and your teres major and minor and blase, blase, blase. And I simply replied, the more you know, the more you grow. And so basically, when I am exercising, I'm actually dissecting. I'm dissecting exactly how to maximize the movement and get the most out of the movement, including the non-movement muscles that are the stabilizers. So just a little bit about maximizing the exercise and not minimizing it. Noticing and activating the muscles you could and should be using, including the stabilizers. Okay, so we'll have a video on that and how to properly activate the lats and the obliques when you're doing the dumbbell row. But today we have the resistance band that we're going to be using, the small loop resistance band for the bent over row. You can do this at home. A lot of people are at home right now doing exercise routines and following along online. And you can also do these at the gym. The reason I love resistance bands. They're great to use for like supersets to produce power and speed, but they're also great, more importantly, to learn and master eccentric and concentric contractions for those who have no idea what that is. And then when we introduce it to them, they can start to feel and engage more with the bands, because the bands actually stretch and contract just as the muscles do, the primary muscles that we're making the primary, the targeted muscle, and we're making that mind and muscle connection with. And so it helps once we locate that primary muscle group and we focus on making that mind and muscle connection, we can then focus on maximizing, again, maximizing the exercise. We can focus on maximizing both ranges of motion. It takes 2 ranges of motion to equal 1 quality rep. 2 ranges of motion to equal 1 quality rep. And so that eccentric and concentric contraction, when we maximize it, we get the most out of it, especially when we stay engaged during the complete rep by maximizing both ranges of motion. Not losing engagement is what I was looking for. So want to keep that engagement through the whole rep. This is actually in my book that's coming out, by the way. Go ahead and plug the book then. All right, so it's in the book, Train the Brain and the Body Will Follow. There's actually a segment on this, but today we're going to show you the loop band resistance single arm row, and also the engagement of that eccentric and concentric contraction. All right, so as always, you guys make sure you subscribe to the channel, turn on the notifications so you can get all of our videos as soon as they hit. Make sure you hit the like button, and then, hey, come see us. It don't matter if it's online or in person. Come get the real experience for yourself. It's not a gimmick, it's not a game. This is real life, and this is what we do. We make it a lifestyle. All right, holla at you in a minute.
Train the brain fit club. 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 It's the club. I ain't got no fear.
All right, so take a loop band just like this one right here. We're going to step in it with the opposite foot, working with the opposite side, the opposite lat. So we go left foot in, and just so you can get a real good look, not of the band, but of the TTBFC slides. There you go. All right, so left foot in, grab it with the right hand. Abs tight, upper back straight, and then we're gonna hinge at the hip. Boom, hinge at the hip, keeping the back straight. We're gonna wrist, so we're gonna take the inside of the wrist to our serratus, all right? Wrist to the serratus, bang, right there. Now you're gonna hold a plank, which means your abs are gonna stay tight, upper back is gonna stay engaged, and again, wrist to the serratus. Now a lot of people have trouble separating the hips from the low back, so doing the row and getting into proper position is very difficult because they start to do things like rounding their low backs like that, or hips underneath them, and they can't really get into the position. So we actually have a tutorial on how to separate the hips from the low back, meaning to hinge at the hips instead of rounding your low back. And even just then, I couldn't even give a good example of doing it incorrectly because I programmed myself on doing it correctly. But in the gym, I've seen so many people struggle with that. Like their hips are like this, and yeah, it's like that, and they're like rounded, and they're wrenching and just messing up their low back, all right? So actually using the hips instead of your low back, and even doing this right here, I can feel a pull here, so just imagine doing that with weight and then getting here, and you'll see that curvage in the spine. So we wanna hold a plank, which helps us maximize the exercise, because now we're getting the work of stabilizing the core at the same time we're working through the lats and actually targeting the primary muscle group, which is our back, while still activating the obliques and the abs. So, boom. Stand up tall, bend on the left foot, grab it with the right hand. I'm going wrist to serratus after I hinge at the hip, boom, and then here. Yep. Then we switch to the opposite side, same thing on this side. Step on it with the opposite foot, boom. Abs tight. Every exercise you do, you should have engagement of the core. And one of the key tips that we use is keeping the abs tight, nice and tall, and the upper back nice and tall and straight. So from here to your upper back is engaged. No rounded shoulders, keeping that engagement. And just by doing that, even by standing, if you haven't done it before, you'll feel activation through your abs and your upper back. And then when you start to add movements to that, you'll be getting free ab work the entire time that you're training other muscle groups. For instance, like a squat, a deadlift, or a bent over row. All right, here we go. So, standing straight up, hinge at the hip again. Boom. All right. Using my hips to hinge, back straight, wrist to the serratus. Now, one thing I want to point out, I'm going to do a set and demonstrate it, focusing, coming right at you. It's very easy, especially if you don't know how to do an exercise, or even if you think you've been doing it correctly, to be minimizing the primary muscle group if you don't know, one, what the primary muscle group is, two, if you don't have proper mind and muscle connection, you can never actually maximize that muscle group, and then three, using other muscles that want to take over for the primary muscle group. Now that can happen when someone has injuries, that can happen when someone has imbalances, but most of the time it just happens because poor technique, and people do what it looks like. It looks like this exercise, it looks like this is how you do it, this is how you're performing the exercise. They see someone doing something, they're like, oh, I want to do that too, it looks cool. Or someone tells them to do it, and they're like, okay, I think I got it, and they do what it looks like instead of actually applying the science behind the movement and mind and muscle connection. So I'm going to show you one of the things. A lot of people will use their trap or their bicep more than their actual targeted muscle, which is the lat. We want to actually tone up the back. So the problem with using your trap is you will take away from the back toning up, and this muscle will get bigger instead of your back toning up and reducing body fat through your back, which is, if you want to have abs, you got to tone up the back. Also, it's very easy, since the bicep is a pulling muscle itself, to dominate with the bicep. So we always coach it, especially with like a TRX row here, and we have a tutorial on how to do the TRX row correctly, to start off by activating the primary muscle group first, and then the secondary muscle group, not the other way around. And that's what most people do. Again, because they don't know, and that's why you're here watching this channel right now, or they just have poor technique, and again, they don't know. All right, so we want to activate the primary muscle group, turning that muscle on instead of dominating with the secondary muscle group, which in this case would be the bicep. It should assist, but it shouldn't take over. All right, so we're going to basically turn this off in the beginning pull and make sure we don't dominate with the lat. So one, and also rotation. All right, so we're going to hold the plank. So here are a couple common mistakes that people have when they do this. So I'm coming right at you straight ahead. One is that rotation that I was just talking about. People will go like this. Okay? Which completely takes away from the primary muscle group. Also, dominating with the tricep and just pulling with your arm, making it an arm exercise. Okay? And then this one, the trap, where they start to pull up and you can see the trap jumping up. So we want to minimize the trap and maximize the lat. So this trap shouldn't be jumping up. So one of the ways we coach it is pretend like this right shoulder and left shoulder are on a line, all right? They're on an axis that goes straight across. And even when I roll, my shoulders should stay on this axis. They shouldn't rotate, and my trap shouldn't jump up to where it pulls it off the axis. So hold that plank, and this is where that oblique and the abs actually kick in, especially when you have a dumbbell on one side and you're stabilizing. But anyway, with the band here, boom, keep the shoulders squared up on that axis and pull with the back. And even as I pull here, my shoulder is not leaving that straight horizontal line right there. I'm not going like this. And I'm not going like this. Picking it up with my trap instead of my back. Same thing on this side. Another stabilizer in this exercise is actually a hamstring in your glutes, because when you hinge at the hip, you're pushing back into the hamstring, so you're stabilizing there too. But again, pulling with the back and making sure you're not pulling with the trap or rotating. All right, boom. And last but not least, one of the major benefits, and I recommend, and I start, a lot of people are using these bands, like I said at first, due to being at home and exercising at home, but we also use these in the gym when we're doing our online sessions to demonstrate the eccentric and concentric contraction. Resistance bands are great to educate you on that. So basically, if I'm doing a bicep curl, my bicep squeezes, that's contraction, that's concentric. And when it comes back down, that's eccentric. Making sure you maximize both ranges of motion there is going to give you the maximum results from the exercise. Making a minor muscle connection with the primary muscle group, the bicep, and this I'm talking about a bicep curl because it's easy to understand. This muscle gets shorter, it contracts, and then it lengthens, but I'm not losing engagement, so I'm not like only focusing on squeezing and then dropping. So it's the same thing with a full body movement when I go to my resistance bands. So when I pull this band, I can feel the tension of the band increasing as I pull it, and at the same time, I can feel the tension in my primary muscle group, which I'm pulling the band with. So I'm pulling with my back, and I can feel the tension increase here, but at the same time, conversely, I can feel it in my back, right? So I can feel the concentric contraction here. I can feel the same thing after I go back down in reverse. Now the band is going to start to pull, so I can feel the band pulling back to its normal state, but at the same time, I'm not just letting the band pull me, right? And that's what most people would do, all right? So I'm going to squeeze the lat, and then I'm going to stretch and engage that eccentric stretch of the lat on the way back down. So it's concentric here, eccentric coming back down. And I don't want to lose engagement. So what I mean by not losing engagement is this. When I squeeze, I don't want to pause at the bottom and just let the band pull me to that. And then reset each time. And this is how most people do rolls, whether it's with a band or not. What I want to do is keep the engagement. So here, bang. And as soon as I feel like I'm about to lose engagement there, I go right back into the concentric. So I stay activated between the two ranges of motion, maximizing both ranges of motion, and that's how you expedite results, and that's how you maximize the exercise. Keeping that engagement, eccentric, concentric contraction, and making sure you focus on mind and muscle connection. All right, so that's it for today. Make sure you smash that like button, subscribe, and turn on the notifications, and hit us up for your free online session. Mindset is the most important set. Train the brain and the body will follow. Let's get it.